Well, I had worked in law firms since I was probably 14 as a runner and just, in the office. I graduated from Florida State, and the plan was to go to the University of Miami Law School. That got derailed, so I had to seek employment. I took a position with Capital Collateral Regional Counsel, which was it's basically a state agency that provides post-conviction representation to death row inmates in Florida. In Florida, our constitution says you can't execute somebody without legal representation. So since people weren't lined up to take those cases because there's not any great money in it, you usually get the worst of the worst clients. And at the end of the appellate process, they execute your client. So it wasn't like there was a ton of people lined up to really jump in and take that work. So I accepted a position with them as an investigator. I worked my way up to lead investigator. Then after several years, I went out on my own doing mitigation and private investigation work. And then that just kind of took off from there. And now I do work all over the world.
Oh, that's great. So is there some sort of requirement for education to get licensed?
Now there is. When I first went out on my own, it was just an application process. And I had so many years of service working with a government agency as an investigator that at the time they did not have testing, and I virtually I was grandfathered in. Now I believe you have to intern under somebody that's an agency, and take a curriculum and there is some testing. But I started my career 30 years ago, so we were barely understanding we were just coming into the information superhighway of what we call the internet. So, I mean, we're talking pretty long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, you look so young, so that's great.
It's the blurriness on the video. It's
you have
fantastic.
A filter? Yeah, this whole StreamYard thing is good. There's some way to do a filter, but I haven't figured it out.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah. So, but when you were an English major in college, did you even think that you would wind up investigating these big, very well publicized criminal cases?
No, the plan was to go to law school. That was the dream. Writing was very natural for me. I really enjoyed writing. And so it was a natural progression when I took the job as an investigator and doing mitigation on these death penalty cases. It was kind of a natural fit, because when you were out in the field, if you were interviewing a witness that was going to recant what they had previously said in a trial, or you basically had to write the affidavit on the spot. And so having a strong background in writing just was a natural hand in glove fit for the role that I was in. And so that became a big part of what I was doing. Also, I was doing all of the social history investigation, the life history of the client's life, their psychosexual, biosocial, psychological backgrounds, their family histories. And so I would write the life history of the client, and that would be implemented into the brief, showing potentially an ineffective assistance of counsel claim where people didn't provide all of the information to the jury, and that may have made the difference at the time of trial. So all of those things, it just dovetailed very organically for somebody with a background in writing.
Sounds very interesting. Did you have to travel a lot to personally meet people, go to prison?
Absolutely. I was traveling probably 3 weeks out of the month, because although the original crime would happen in Florida, that's where the case would originate, their families would be all over, and witnesses had been, you have to understand, I wouldn't even get a case until after direct appeal. So after a trial, it would go to an automatic direct appeal, and it would be 5, 6, 8 years before the Supreme Court would affirm the conviction. And from there, so I'm already 8 years past trial by time I would get involved in the case. And that's a case that was coming right off direct appeal. And so those people had scattered and moved and relocated. And so I was all over the country at the time.
And for this type of work, is it the taxpayers that ultimately would pay for these services?
Yes, because in Florida, well, it's just the agency that I worked for is based, you have to look at it almost like a public defender's office, except for post-conviction. No other class of defendants get a legal team other than ones on death row. And I have tried to educate as many people as possible throughout my career that, I understand that everyone has a belief in the death penalty, whether they're for it or against it. But what you don't understand is that it is so unbelievably costly to go through the expense of trying to uphold a death warrant or a sentence of death. So yeah, so the public, it's almost like a public defender's office. That's a line item budget in the Florida, budget, and it's set by the governor and the legislature. And so I guess for, all intents and purposes, you would say that it's funded by the taxpayers.
Oh, okay. But now you're in private practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes. So, but it also sounds like you also do work for insurance companies. Like, what's the
I do.
breakdown?
I do. So currently, I still do a lot of criminal work, but I also am doing insurance defense work. And I have really found a passion in that because sometimes what we are seeing, and we see it in Florida a lot with tort reform, and that sometimes we're having some plaintiffs cases that are a little predatory, and everybody wants to be real litigious and sue. And what happens is the common people like you and I and people that are watching it sends our insurance rates through the roof. So what I am brought in to do is I evaluate claims and just determine, I provide a defense if there is one and do the investigation for insurance cases. So when somebody claims they have a traumatic brain injury and they can't work ever again because they were involved in an accident with somebody, and I'm not the surveillance team. I don't do anything like that, but I do a lot of research and I interview witnesses, and I find out that they have a job that's, a labor intensive job. And then, a surveillance team identifies that they are not so impaired that they can't work. We use that information to aid in the resolution of a case. So what happens is sometimes they get resolved in mediation, so it doesn't end up being a trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to do lots of personal injury and workers' comp cases at my previous firms. And
Mm-hmm.
I had this terrible auto accident case where ultimately the insurance company sent an investigator and followed my client to his gym where he was like working out like a fiend and lifting weights and
Right.
running like crazy on a treadmill and stuff. And we just had to drop the client. But I was like, dang, those insurance companies, they are willing to invest
They,
in private investigators.
they are, but it's, it's like, I think you can make an argument. Insurance companies love to say no, and
Mhm.
that's frustrating because we all pay these premiums, and they're supposed to be there when we need them. But there's also some scenarios where they really are being taken advantage of. When you have, like, I've had some scenarios where these people have gotten these huge payouts claiming that they needed long-term care and in-home care, and they would never be able to live independently, and they'd never be able to do anything without the aid of somebody, and would never be employable again. And then 60, 90 days post resolution, when they get the first installment of their $9 million or whatever number it is, they've their brand new Range Rovers being delivered. They're driving by themselves. Nobody's living with them, and they are running a Pilates class. That is very
Wow.
frustrating. And once the case is resolved, there's nothing the insurance company can do. So they are now being a little bit more proactive in spending money on the back end. And so what we're finding is sometimes the doctors that are being used and some of the lawyers are not being, and I don't want to paint a broad brush, but some of them are being bad actors. And what we're finding is that we're going after them. We're going at, not me personally, but the insurance companies are going after the experts and some of the lawyers for bad faith, because they're acting in bad faith and they're being unethical, and so they're getting reported to the bar. And I'm seeing bigger things, like there's cases in various states where there's these rings, where they are intentionally targeting big trucks. And you're right. The people that are asking questions are absolutely right. You have one person that gets a fraudulent $18 million payout, and the rest of us, our premiums are going through the roof, and we've never made a claim. And so that's why I really enjoy that kind of work, because I feel like I'm fighting for people more like you and I that are underrepresented when we have to pay the high premiums for things that aren't, we're not getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I guess most people are interested in Dan Markel's case, of course. That's why
Yeah.
people keep wanting to contact you. And I'm so sorry. I don't think I watched that full episode where Surviving the Survivor interviewed you a while back. So you might be rehashing the same stuff you
Oh,
said there,
okay.
but we want to hear it. So
Okay.
tell us, how did you even get involved with doing something to help Luis Rivera?
Well, because my work, so the defense work that I do, I've been the lead investigator on 11 different teams where we've walked 11 guys off death row. So when it comes to mitigation on death penalty work or at the trial level, I am known within that field. And so because this was local, and we've had some really big cases here locally, it's kind of interesting because we're kind of a small town. We're not a really great metropolis, but we've had some big cases. The Markel case has really captured the nation's attention because it's just got all of the, I don't know, all the variables that make it really exciting. So the two lawyers got appointed, Dave and Chuck Collins. It's a dad and son team, and they brought me in to do the mitigation because they were originally seeking the death penalty against Lewis and Sigfrido. And so I got involved in that case and immediately was very nervous. Anytime the government is seeking the death penalty, I am always looking for a way to either find a way to avoid a death sentence, because if you have the opportunity to avoid being in trial expecting 12 people to make that decision, if you can get ahead of that, that's the better place to be, and you're kind of negotiating from a position of strength. And sometimes in this circuit, what they would do is they would initially start by seeking the death penalty, and then you could make an arrangement to waive 12 jurors for 6, and then they would waive the death penalty. That wasn't happening here. They were really putting a lot of pressure to go forward on the death penalty in this case. And the government in this case had a phenomenal case to convict that Prius of being in the general vicinity. But they did have some problems. And David Collins and Chuck Collins were brilliant in the strategy to demand speedy. I, of course, was having a heart attack because there was no way I was going to be able to get through all of that discovery in time to go to trial, and especially on a death penalty case, because death penalty cases, it's months and months of preparing and doing the family history and the life history and figuring out the mitigation and expert witnesses evaluating the client. And so that was a really brave strategy, but it worked beautifully in Lewis's case because he got
Yes,
a really nice deal offer.
that's what everyone says. It's like, out of these criminals, he was the smartest because he's going to be free pretty
He'll
soon.
go home, right?
Yeah.
That was not an easy, that was a really tough challenge and hurdle to get him there. He was so You have to understand he was a father at 13. So he
Mhm.
had lived a life that is very different than what we would probably most of us have experienced, and certainly what we would want our children to experience. So even though he was young, he was grown. He was not formally educated in the sense that, you know, he was well read, well spoken, but business minded, street smart. And it took a lot of time with establishing a rapport with him and a sense of trust that he could trust what I was telling him. There was no way out. The only options he had was going to be potentially a life sentence, which would be considered a win, or they would give him death. I did not think a jury would give him death without knowing for certain who the shooter was, because in those situations in a trial, we would have claimed Sigfrido was the shooter. Sigfrido would have claimed we were the shooter. So you would have had a little bit of this if we were tried together. Even if we weren't tried together, you always would point to the empty seat as being the shooter. And so I think the real challenge was getting him to understand, for the first time in his life, he needed to really think about himself and his family, and not the global family of his affiliates, his criminal affiliates.
Mhm. So, what do you recall of your first meeting with him? Do you
He's
remember?
tiny. He's
Yeah, that's what
tiny.
Chuck Collins said. He was like, "Oh, this guy was so short. Like he didn't
Chuck,
look
Chuck Collins is
scary."
not a Chuck Collins is not a really tall, big guy. He's just an average sized guy. But I mean, I look at Lewis like a little bit like a fire hydrant. He's short but stout. I mean, like he's just solid. Like, like if you ran into a fire hydrant, it's like a solid piece of, just concrete. And that's what he reminded me of. But he was very unassuming. And I just spoke to him uh just like we were old friends. I know whenever I go and meet with a client for the first time, I always know as much about the case as I can, because I always feel like I can't go in and just bluff this guy. This is this guy's life. And if I
Yeah.
go in and try and bluff that I know more about the case than I do, they're going to know that I'm not being genuine. And that's going to set a tone for a very bad relationship. There has to be a level of trust. And so I tell the client, um, my husband is in law enforcement, and I tell them my history. I tell them what I've done. I don't ever want them to feel like I withheld something from them, because like I said, I'm asking them to talk to me about some of the most um, intimate details of their life, especially when you're collecting information for mitigation. When you're talking to a young man about maybe some sexual abuse, some physical abuse, some um, just terrible, terrible things that they may have experienced. You have to have a real open dialogue and a true relationship, trusting relationship with that individual. And that's what Lewis and I were able to develop. And he was adamant. He wasn't gonna help. He wasn't gonna help. He wasn't gonna help. And it just was a little bit over time. He understood. And I think his family behind the scenes were doing some research on me and realizing what a little bit of my background was, that they're like, listen, she's not kidding. Like, she's telling you what's going to happen. And had we known at the time how instrumental Lewis was going to be over the course of the past, almost 9 or 10 years, I think we probably would have held out for maybe even a better resolution. Although the gift that he got, that he will go home one day, was very gracious, I think, on behalf of the government. But they wouldn't be where they are today without Luis Rivera. And
That's
I'm
right.
talking about the government's success.
Yeah. So did you get the sense that Lewis didn't trust you at first? Because,
No,
I
no, I
mean,
don't think that. I don't think that it's not that he didn't trust me, but he was pretty concrete in his position and based on, he's been a part of a criminal enterprise, for longer. He's been a part of a criminal enterprise longer than he had not, is if you look at the span of his life. So
mhm,
for somebody, an older white female, to come in and be like, no, no, listen to me, I'm going to tell you all about how to fix your life. I could see where that would be a little bit like, yeah, go jump in a lake, lady. So it just took a little bit of time. But the more, a lot of times when I go and I meet with a client, it's not all about the case. Sometimes it's like, hey, what's going home? What's going on back home? What's going on with your sister? Are you able to communicate with your children? What is the mother of this child struggling with today? So that genuine relationship then fosters a better relationship where he understands, and a little few things are like, hey, my grandmother's really sick in Puerto Rico, can you check with my mom or my sister or my brother about how she's doing? Leaving the jail and then making that phone call and then being able to come back to him the next time I saw him and tell him, hey, this is what's going on with the abuela. This is what's going on here. This is what's going on with the little one in second grade. He knew I was true to my word. I wouldn't just say, oh, yeah, 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 I'll take care of it, and then didn't. So all of that stuff kind of builds on top of itself and then creates a relationship where, he was able to trust me when I said, this is the best decision I think you can make. But I make that be his decision. Um, and I told him, listen, I make more money if you go to trial. I'm paid hourly. So, but when you lose, you're never coming home. And there was a strong likelihood, we would lose Georgia. I knew how good Georgia was, and I'd seen Georgia get secure convictions in cases with far less evidence, and I just didn't think that there would be a way to overcome that in a trial.
hmm, okay. So do you recall how many times you met with him?
I probably met with him once a week
Mhm.
for several months,
That's
but I
a
will.
lot of times. Yeah,
Yeah, and it would be for
sounds like
several
it.
hours. It would be for
Yeah.
out. We would meet for extended periods of time.
Mhm. And when you met with him, did you record him or take
No,
notes or just sit there and chit
I
chat?
just took notes.
Uh-huh.
Just took notes. A lot of my concern initially was not with there's two phases of a post-conviction case, or trial, in a murder trial when they're seeking death. There's the guilt phase where you basically say, my client didn't do it, my client didn't do it, my client didn't do it. And then the jury comes back and say they convict him. Then you move into the second phase where you say, okay, my client did it, but let me explain why he doesn't deserve the death penalty, or what kind of things we can do to, mitigate a death sentence for a life sentence. So all of that time I spent trying to develop a relationship with him to start building what we were going to use in a penalty phase. God forbid we ever got there. Because the factual part of it was going to be, based on the information that we knew the government had, it was going to be really, it was going to come down to who was the shooter, whether it was Sigfredo or Lewis. And it based on principle and felony murder and all of those things. Sometimes it doesn't even matter who the shooter. I mean, you know this, you're a lawyer. It doesn't matter who the shooter is.
Mhm.
It's I guess the simplest way to
He's
understand
there.
felony murder is
Mhm.
you're guilty by association. Being there is just as bad as pulling the trigger.
Mhm. Yes, and he did buy the gun too, at least one of them, and he helped buy bullets, or he went with Sigfredo to
Mhm.
purchase the bullets. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so this is so interesting because I always thought that the investigator would be more needed after the guilty verdict, but it sounds like from the start, his lawyers brought you in because it was a death penalty case.
Right. Even when there's not, even when death is not an option, I get brought in typically pretty early because for every witness that the state is going to put on, I re-interview. A couple of reasons. Sometimes they're nervous when they give a statement to law enforcement, so you really want to get a good clarifying statement from them. I learned in a case, I had a case years ago where they actually ended up dropping the murder charge against him because they had all of these eyewitnesses that claimed they saw my guy commit the shooting, and they were ladies of the night. They were, but I went back and I was able to find them and re-interview them. And I learned that the investigating officer pointed to the picture of my client on the lineup, and that's how they identified him. It wasn't that they actually saw him.
Well,
So going back and re-interviewing all of the witnesses is very important. In this case, it was going to be, it would have been really difficult because Charlie wasn't going to talk to us. He would have lawyered up. Donna wouldn't have talked to us. She would have lawyered up. Katie had her own problems. Sigfrido was arrested at the same time, so he had a lawyer. So we were only going to be able to re-interview like the Jeff Lacosses of the world and, some of the people that partied with them on that first scouting trip they did. People at the gym, people just, kind of the lay fact witnesses, but didn't really have any true details. So that's why at that time it wasn't going to be I don't think super labor intensive on the front end with re-interviewing those fact witnesses. And I was primarily concerned with the death penalty at the time because, like I said, David and Chuck had waived speedy and we were going at warp speed to trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed like it happened so quickly. But was there some aha moment where Lewis finally said that he wanted to cut a deal? I don't know if you're able to tell us.
Well, that I'm not able to specifically talk about what he said, but they started negotiating with Georgia. Georgia knew that she probably would have a much stronger case. We felt like Lewis was being absolutely honest. Mm-hmm. And he had information the government didn't have. And that's what further was the test of his veracity and truthfulness. So when they started the negotiations, they wouldn't commit until he did a proffer. And he did a proffer, which is, as you know, where he went and sat down and told everything. And he has never to this day, 10 years, almost 10 years later, ever wavered from what he's told. And he's had so many depositions, so many lawyers, so many trials, so many opportunities to be cross-examined. And the guy has been, he's been solid. And it's because if he had not been genuine and solid from the first trial, all of these other trials probably would have fallen apart and they would have demolished him. And I'll say Katie had some pretty decent lawyers. So, I wish they would have convinced her to save her own life, but
yeah,
maybe they didn't have a Monica Jordan to help him do that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so did Katie's attorneys also hire some sort of investigator similar to you to help them? I don't know.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did in some capacity, but it's very rare at the trial level to find somebody that has, 20 plus years of post-conviction experience and capital trial experience on the fact side and on the mitigation side. I mean, I can think of maybe 3 or 4 in the field that I would consider having the ability. Sometimes what you have are just fact investigators, and then you have mitigation specialists. With me, you've got, kind of got both. And I think, the public defender's office has those people, have those people with those skills in-house, but court-appointed lawyers are having to hire court-appointed people like me that will do it at the court-appointed rate. And there's a real drought in talent, and there's a real drought in the depth of people that can even do that work.
Yeah. So you mentioned having to talk to a bunch of witnesses. Were there witnesses who just refused to talk to you?
Not in this case, but I have had that in other cases. I mean, obviously, not everybody wants to talk, and that's fine. I mean, then you just get a subpoena and we depose you. So, I mean, we can do it really informally, and it can be really just laid back, and we can have a conversation, or you can come sit in a room with the government and a bunch of defense attorneys and do the same thing at a very inconvenient time and place.
Yeah. So I'm interested, like, how would you get a witness to talk to you? Do you just try to show up and
Yes.
surprise them at their workplace or home?
No, I'm not disrespectful like that. I really do not show up at somebody's work, because that's kind of a asshole thing to do to somebody. But what I do is, the FBI, they made this big thing about the bump, sending the undercover in to kind of trying to get Donna to talk about some, the case and get her talking on the phones. I look at the bump as a little different. Sometimes I just put a business card on the door and says, hey, Judy, please call me when you get a chance. Thank you, Monica Jordan. And, I rewrite my number on it. And it's just human nature when you look at my business card and it says Jordan Research and Consulting, Monica Jordan, investigator, mitigation specialist, that they go, I wonder what this is about. And they will reach out. Well, if they call me, then it's a little bit more like on their terms. And they're like, hey, I got this card on my door. What's this about? And so then it just leads to, hey, I'm an investigator. I'm working on this case. Your name's been listed as a witness. I just need to sit down and spend about 10 minutes with you, just kind of about what you know. And then we'll coordinate something. Or if it's, not a real heavy lift, we can do it by phone. Sometimes when I go to leave the card on the door, I'm lucky enough and I catch them there and we have the same conversation. And then that just creates a dialogue. If they say, no, I don't want to talk to you, then, at some point they'll get a subpoena and they're going to talk to somebody. The biggest thing if they say, well, the state attorney's office told me not to talk to you. Well, that's just like music to my ears, because they're not allowed to do that. So then that creates a whole other element of unraveling for, the government can't be telling witnesses not to talk to the defense. That's a real no-no.
Yeah. So did you talk to Shadrick Nobles?
He's the guy. Remind me, is he the one that was in the hotel room that was providing the party favors?
Yeah, help them fix their car when they shot the gas line.
I don't remember specifically if I spoke with him. I think I spent more time getting his background information and all of his felony convictions, because what I also do is I do a pretty deep dive on each witness in addition to talking to them. Because if he say, and I'm just using him as an example, I don't remember just from memory. If he had 7 felony convictions, I would get those felony convictions. I would get the certified copies of the judgment and sentence. And any case, even if it was a misdemeanor that involved moral turpitude, where he, say writing a bad check is a moral turpitude issue, petty theft is a moral turpitude then lends to the fact that maybe you don't like to tell the truth. So we would use that material to impeach somebody on the stand about their ability to be truthful. So I have all of these like other plates I'm juggling in addition to developing what the interview is going to look like with the subject that's, a potential witness.
Mhm. Okay. Well, since you've been doing this for 30 plus years, have you seen people gradually become less and less willing to speak to a stranger? Because I kind of feel like with so much crime these days, I don't even want to open the door or talk to strangers anymore. Makes me kind of
Absolutely.
paranoid. Yeah.
Absolutely. So interestingly, this is going to sound really probably, I don't know how to phrase this, but I'm pretty unassuming. I'm short. I'm older.
Mhm.
I'm dressed pretty like, conservative and in the way that like I'm not wearing high heels or, like, and so I'm fairly unassuming if you see me at your front door. Where I think, and this is just me being very honest and candid, where I think I've had some success where others have not is because I'm a female and I'm
Mhm.
very unassuming and it just looks like I'm lost. Like,
Oh,
oh,
so
well,
people want to help you and talk to
right,
you.
right. They think they're
Yeah.
like, oh, look, she's, selling Girl Scout cookies, or she's doing a survey or, but what I have found is that it's very unarming where if I was a 6'5" male
Mhm.
built with a beard and, I don't know how many people would open the door. I don't think a lot of women would open the door. I
Yeah.
don't think being like that size, another man would want to open the door because for the exact reasons you say. Like I've actually done trainings for various public defenders office and various agencies that involve people having to go and do this. And it's like, listen, park in the driveway, let them see that you're coming from the car. What you wear can be very provide an implied bias. If you are a female and you are expressing yourself with tattoos on your face and hardware that you would want to use that you used because that's how you dress and that's how you that may be very um, unnerving to somebody to open the door for you. And
Mhm.
it's just an implied bias, and we learn all about these implied biases and profiling and racial discrimination, and we learn all those things. But when you're knocking on somebody's door and you're wanting them to be welcoming and want to talk to you, you probably have to look as benign as possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
it's no
that's true.
different. Like in my years of doing this, I have been everywhere from an Aryan Nation clubhouse to a Black Panther rally. So you have to be a little bit of a chameleon to fit into whatever segment you're in. Obviously, if I show up to somebody's house and they have a Confederate flag or something that maybe does not I don't agree with personally, I don't start the conversation with, hey, I don't really like your Confederate flag or whatever. I don't like your I stand with Ukraine or I like butterflies or whatever.
Mhm.
You got to get in the door and you're trying to get them to talk to you. So being obstinate to what they want, what their preference is not going to be a really high rate of success for you. So
Mhm.
I just have to like go with the flow. Oh, you like butterflies? Great. You like
Yeah.
Confederate flags?
Like I love
Good for you.
your Halloween decorations or how old are your kids? Hey, I have kids too,
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's you see a lot and you see all colors of the spectrum. And what the interesting thing is when you are going to people's home is that despite what our preferences are, we are all so much more similar than we really think. We all don't want to get up tomorrow morning and go to work. The dog has thrown up in the house. The kids are driving you nuts. It's all of these things that really have such a more commonality that brings, it should be bringing us closer together, but for some reason it does not.
Okay.
But I've had the unique ability to go all over the country and see it, and it's fascinating.
Have you ever had to testify in court, or are you always behind the scenes helping
No,
lawyers?
I testify. I testify.
Oh, okay.
I've also been deemed an expert and a subject matter expert in fact investigation and mitigation. I also, if we're in a trial and a witness has told me something, testified to something differently, I can be called as a rebuttal witness.
Oh, so that brings to mind, I don't know if you watched all of Donna's trial, but
I didn't
remember
watch
when
any of it.
you didn't watch any of it? Oh no, man. Okay, because
Sorry.
well, let me just give you a quick summary from my fading memory. But there was a private investigator who I think now works in South Georgia, but she was in Tallahassee and she had taught with Patricia Bird, who was one of the jailhouse inmates that
I think her
was,
name is like Tarana Khan. She had worked at the
yeah.
Federal Public Defender's Office.
Do you know her?
Not personally, no.
Oh, okay. So they were trying to say that, look, Patricia Bird, the inmate with a big criminal background, her credibility is crappy because she thought the investigator who spoke with her was white, but she's black, and she had not brought up anything about Donna Adelson, I think, during some sort of interview that they had with her. Um, but I can't remember the timeline. So, yeah, so that I thought was interesting that they brought in this one person just to, try to poke holes at this jailhouse person's credibility.
Right. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that investigator personally. I will say this: if you're bringing in somebody to interview a witness that's going to testify again, like I don't know in which capacity they brought the investigator in to talk to the cooperating witness. I don't know if it was after the government decided to use her or before. But I will tell you, in my experience, if I interviewed somebody and developed a relationship with that person and we were going to use them as a witness, and I had not done all of my research and background and really put a solid, just really prepared for that interview, and I later found out that the client and that witness were in collusion to lie, I would probably jump off a bridge. I would be so horrified at my performance that, I mean, you didn't know the client had put this witness up to being a stooge for her.
Yeah, maybe
I mean,
that
that
happened before Donna allegedly tried to influence the inmate. Yeah, I think this was the lady that said Donna had promised her a plot of land and a
and a
trailer and
piano. I think
10,000. No, that was Drina.
Oh,
Drina
that was
was
a
the
different
one
one.
promised a grand piano. I'm like, what does she need a grand piano for? She seems to be homeless or
Right.
transient or had
Right.
a major drug addiction. But with Drina, Donna allegedly promised the grand piano plus have Charlie's former roommate, Dr. Oped, write prescriptions for her, which I'm sure Dr. Oped didn't appreciate having his name put out there. And
No.
I'm sure there was money. Was there $10,000 also? Yeah, there was probably money promised also.
Right. But the biggest hurdle they had was that the script was written and I may be getting the two witnesses confused, but on one of those cooperating witnesses was that Donna had written the script
for
to
Trina.
which they were supposed to testify to. And I'm like, wow, that's just really, I would have wanted to vet that a little better before I put that forth.
Yeah. Well, I think the private investigator, Miss Khan, was just involved with Patricia Bird, not with Trina. So,
Right.
yeah. But so I guess sometimes you do have to get swept up in the court testimony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, speaking of that, since you didn't watch the trial, can I play a little snippet of Lewis?
Sure.
Okay, you have time. Okay,
Yeah.
this is only like 2 minutes, two
No,
and a half
that's fine.
minutes. Okay, thank you.
Look at that and tell me if you recognize that.
Yeah,
And what is that?
like a profile of everybody's face.
Okay. And did you make some marks on this for me and then sign it on March the 11th of 2025?
Yes, I did.
You just hold on to that for a second. Mr. Rivera, when we met with you that day taking your deposition, and I presented that to you, you gave us information about what had happened, pretty similar to what you talked about here today, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And when we were done talking about those things and some information about Sigfredo and Katie, I presented you with what's in front of you as Defendant's Exhibit 50, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I asked if you would put the number 1 and circle it next to the person you know as Katie, who you said was in charge of this whole deal, correct?
Yep.
And did you do that?
Yep.
All right. And then I said, would you put a number 2 next to the person you say did this killing?
Yes.
And you did that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that was Sigfredo Garcia.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one was Katie McBadwell, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I said, would you put a number 3 next to yourself on the paper? And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am. And
you're the one who got the gun that was used to kill Danny Markel, and you drove the car that day. You didn't shoot him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I said, if you would, please put the number 4 next to the man who was killed, and you did that with Danny Markel, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I said, if you would, put the number 5 next to the lady that wanted the man killed. And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And was that with Wendy Adelson?
Yes, I did.
And then I asked you if the 2 people on the top of the page who have their pictures there and the names Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson, you see those on the top?
Yes, ma'am.
I asked you, as far as you know, were they involved in any of this? And you said no, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I asked you to put X's next to the people who go on that page who were not involved in this.
Yes, ma'am.
And you did that.
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Just one moment, Your Honor.
Read records, I mean.
Okay, that's it. Well, at the beginning of cross-examination, Fulford did ask Lewis who was the lady who wanted her 2 kids back, and he said Wendy Adelson. So he didn't really have a big role in this trial because he
Correct.
didn't have any interactions with Donna, and he actually didn't directly interact with Wendy either, but he did know and say the name Wendy repeatedly. So I was wondering, for Charlie's trial, you did meet with Lewis, right? Before the
I meet
trial?
with Lewis every time before a
Oh.
trial. He won't meet with the government unless I'm there. And the government won't meet with him unless I'm there.
Oh, is that a rule?
No, but I mean, he trusts me,
Mhm.
and in an effort to not aggravate witnesses that are being transferred, you have to understand the reason why I pause is because I think you have to understand a little bit. I have to go back a little bit. Whenever these trials come up, if Lewis is in the middle of taking his last GED exam, they don't care. And that's fine. You know, he was involved in a murder. He has aligned himself with the government to testify in these proceedings, and it is always inconvenient, and it doesn't matter what's going on in his life, in his little life inside prison. But they roll him up at 3:00 in the morning and they bring him here. He has no idea what's going on. He's a little rattled. He's a little frustrated. He can't take the last part of his GED exam. And now he has to sit for the whole course again, when and if he ever gets back to wherever he's serving his time. And so you can understand he's a little like, I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to do this. I keep every time he comes back, there's another series of podcast, news, court TV. His face is live streamed throughout the trial. Anybody that didn't know who he was in the prison system, he is now back in the forefront of the prison system. So yes, when he comes back, it is easier for them to allow him to see me in either a legal visit or, just a social visit, just to be like, hey, this is what's going on. You're going to testify again. And so I see him every time he comes back.
Oh, okay. What about this last time? Can you tell us how that meeting went?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's brought to the state attorney's office because for security reasons, because they have to show him documents that will be used as exhibits, which is completely proper because there's usually 5 years between trials, if not more. And so they go through and I sit there and we have a nice conversation, very informal. And then they will provide documents that they may need for him to identify. And that's what he does. And that is completely proper for both sides to do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just thought of a burning question that I've
Okay.
had for years. I don't know if you can answer this. So during one of the trials, maybe it was the first trial or the second trial, Christopher DeCoste was questioning Lewis on the stand, and he said something like, and you saw a photo lineup that included a picture of Wendy Adelson. And then Lewis just said something like, yeah, he acknowledged that he saw a photo lineup. But my question has been, did Lewis correctly pick Wendy from that photo lineup?
I don't know. Because I wasn't a part of that trial and I don't know. I don't know the document that they showed him. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. From day one, and this is in the proffer, and this is what he has testified to, so I'm not telling any big secret.
Yeah.
He has always said, the lady. I saw the lady.
Yeah.
And he is always, and when he first said that, we were like, what in the world is he talking about? And when Jason Newland, the chief state attorney investigator, we'd have conversations, after Lewis had pled, and come to find out, he was telling the truth. He was always right. Just like Brooklyn says, he saw Wendy outside of the house. And at the time he knew so much more information than we knew. And that was a little bit of a test to his acumen and the fact that he was being truthful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually emailed DeCoste about that a couple of years ago and he never responded. So I'm sure his mind has been filled with tons of different cases
Absolutely.
since then.
Yeah.
So he probably doesn't even remember at this point. But I want to know, it's like, did Lewis pick her out? Because of course there's that whole controversy that the kids were in daycare the day before Dan was shot. But, what's significant is that supposedly there was some woman walking on the street that Sigfredo said, "There's Wendy. That's the lady we're doing the job for," according to Lewis. So,
Right.
how'd that come
There
out
go
of the
he
blue?
always there goes the lady right there. There goes the lady
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
And they made a big to do. Jackie, Miss Fulford made a big to do in that cross examination about Donna and Harvey not having anything to do with this. When in every solicitation case I've ever done, a murder for hire case that I've been a part of from the defense, it is not uncommon. In fact, it's very common to keep things very siloed so that you don't know where the direction or who ordered the execution. So the fact that a guy that's driving the trigger man doesn't know who is the head of the snake is really of no consequence.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to kind of make a big to-do about that, I understand why they did that, because they need as many people to say as possible that Harvey and Donna didn't know anything about anything. But when you look at the totality and the whole picture, it's like, who cares? I mean, every mob hit, you kind of know where it came from, but you don't know who was the one that actually ordered the execution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why for so many years they thought they got away with it, because weren't they so clever to have these, what did Kappelman say, little train cars that didn't communicate with the others?
Yeah, I mean, that's very common that's even common in most criminal enterprises, is that one segment of the criminal enterprise has no idea what the other person or the other segment is doing. Law enforcement does a really great job of linking those things up in a trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is what a lot of people had said, is that maybe Lewis got the first trip and the second trip mixed up. And when I was rewatching his direct examination today, I did notice he just couldn't remember a lot. There were multiple questions where Kappelman was asking him for details and trying to pull it out of him. And he's like, "I don't remember," I'm like,
Yeah, it's been 10
not
years.
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's been 10 years. And the one thing that makes Lewis a good witness is that, and when I say a good witness, you can look at that through both lenses, as a government witness or as a defense witness, is that he's never diminished his role and he's never embellished his role. He's been very consistent since the proffer. Typically, I have found when you're interviewing somebody, because in these post-conviction cases, some take 20, 30 years. There's cases that I worked on in the late 1900s that are still going on, and we're in 2025.
Wow.
And so, what you see is sometimes those witnesses, one day they're the getaway driver, the next day they're the shooter, now they're back to being the getaway driver, now I wasn't even there. And Lewis has been consistent throughout. Now, he also needs to be consistent because, his deal is contingent on him continuing to be consistent and tell the truth. But I have found, I have never had an experience with him where I ever had any pause and felt like, is that completely accurate? That has never been, believe me, I have clients not be truthful all the time. So that wouldn't be a shock, but I've never had that with Lewis. He has been consistent and truthful every time.
Okay, that's great to hear. Cliff has a good question. Allegedly, there was a long conversation with Rivera, Isom, and Sanford before the recorded proffer. Can Monica confirm?
There was no. Rivera never spoke to anybody without his legal team there, ever. We never would have let him speak.
Yeah.
With any of those guys.
Okay.
Especially not the FBI. I mean, if there was any now there was I believe after the proffer, when he disclosed that they threw the gun in a body of water,
Mhm.
Chuck Collins and Lewis were taken in an armed vehicle with sworn law enforcement and I believe a part of the SWAT team. And they drove from Leon County probably most of the way down the state. I mean, they were gone for hours. And looking for where Lewis believed they threw the gun. But even then, they were with his lawyer was with him at all times. But
Yeah.
any follow-up, if they had had any follow-up with ISOM or the FBI or any of that stuff, the Chuck would have been there.
Yeah. And I could have sworn I saw you in that video too. Were you sitting there in the conference room?
Yeah, I was in the proffer. I was with Lewis at the
Yeah.
proffer.
Okay.
I think I was at the end of the table.
Yeah. So were you shocked as you heard him say these things, or were these things he had already talked to you and Chuck and his father about?
We had already had those discussions, but the government had specific and law enforcement had specific questions.
Okay. Wow, so interesting. Let's see. Just getting to some questions here.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Did Monica find it strange that Donna's investigator, who was the Tarana Khan, did not record the interview with the jail informant, Patricia Bird?
I don't think that's strange because I don't record statements. When you record statements, people become
Defensive?
not just defensive, but a little guarded and they don't want to be. And when I conduct an interview, I liken it more to a conversation. It's very conversational. It's very informal. I want them to speak in their natural dialect. If they tend to have salty language, I just want them to be comfortable because that's when you're going to get the best, information. I don't know if she would have been able. She technically probably could not have had a legal contact visit with this witness because she was not a part of that witness's legal team. So she would only be able to see her behind glass. And you'd have to have special permission to bring in a recording device into the detention center. So there was a lot of challenges she would have had, but I am not critical of the fact that she didn't record it. But I will say, if she thought there was something that was really, really great that she needed to lock in, she should have handwritten a sworn statement or found a way to document it in some capacity. But I don't know in what context Mr. Zellman and Ms. Fulford sent her in to do the interview. I don't know if because it's my understanding one of them, and I could be completely wrong, but it was my understanding that they were going to be defense witnesses and maybe the defense investigator was going in just to firm up the testimony. Again, she's probably horrified to learn on the back end during trial that this was all fabricated at the behest of their own client, because that would be really frustrating from a defense investigator standpoint. Typically, you don't want to put witnesses on the witness list that are going to blow up in your face.
Of course.
That would be my experience and my position on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that my memory about this private investigator is a little fuzzy. So I just did some Googling here. And whoever this person is on X, thank you.
Perfect.
But this person did a trial recap and said mitigation specialist Tarana Khan testified she interviewed Patricia Bird at the Leon County Jail. Khan said Bird never claimed Donna Adelson offered her land, a trailer, veneers, a car, or confessed.
See, so before you go on, I would have handwritten an affidavit or prepared a sworn statement or had her had her deposed so that there would have been a formal sworn statement from that witness claiming Donna never did these things. So when she recanted on the stand, Donna's team could have impeached her with that sworn document instead of just Miss Khan testimony saying it didn't happen.
Okay. So
And then Eddie Varnes had the same thing.
Mhm.
It says, right.
Okay.
And I would have done the same for Mr. Varnes. I know Eddie Varnes, he's great. I would have locked her into that statement, whether it be a recorded statement, an affidavit, or through a deposition, so that you never want it to be a hearsay issue between your investigator and the witness. You'd rather have a sworn document, because then if the witness ends up saying something in contrast to what you already have, you want to be able to impeach them and basically make them useless for either side.
Okay. Yeah, who knows what the timing of things are. I mean,
Well, that's the risk. I mean, that is a little
Yeah.
bit of a risk when you're using witnesses. It cuts both ways. When the government uses a confidential informant, the defense always has the ability to impeach them. And so it's the same way for the defense. If the defense is using a confidential informant as a star witness, then they're not ideal. The government will be Georgia will be the first to tell you. If I had a priest and a priest and a rabbi as my witnesses, that would be a lot better than a recovering drug addict that's got 80 felony convictions.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, none of us get to pick who the witnesses to the event are.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I thought when they were on the stand, both Patricia Bird and Trina Bernhardt, they both seemed pretty credible to me. Especially when the defense decided to show surveillance video from the jail where Drina and Donna were both sitting and talking at the table with a notebook. And it didn't look like Drina was entrapping Donna or making stuff up or telling Donna to write stuff. So I think that kind of backfired because the defense showed it.
I think the biggest blowback on that was, it's my understanding, some of those documents were in Donna's handwriting, as if she was providing a script. And I mean, what do you say? How do you deal with that from a defense standpoint? Because you got to be quick on your feet when you're in the middle of trial, when you're in the trenches. And how do you negate that? You have to put Donna on the stand and say, "Oh my gosh, she was telling me what to write. I was so scared. I was being extorted. Blah, 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 blah. She forced me. I was scared. They had been sexually abusing me in the shower." Whatever the connotation is, or the circumstances are. But you didn't have that. So to put that on without putting Donna on the witness stand to explain it, I mean, I'm not being critical of their strategy. I'm just saying sometimes when you do things like that, it has a negative impact than what collateral damage than what you wanted.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, we'll wind things up soon, but I did want to bring up from 2021 when Lewis filed something trying to get his sentence reduced or to stay in federal court. So is he still in Mariana Correctional Facility?
I believe he is. I believe he's still being housed in Mariana in the feds.
Okay. I checked a couple of months ago, and that's where it said he was. So, do you know if he's still concerned about safety?
I think he's always going to have a concern about safety. I think what I have seen in Lewis from a personal standpoint, hold on, let me see, read that.
Oh, sorry.
Is
He's
that
saying,
is that he has matured. He has matured in personal conversations, not professional conversations, but you can tell that in looking back, he recognizes, wow, this was a father. I can't, I was a part of something that was so awful. And what's really stands out to me, and this is something he has said from day one publicly, so this is not some kind of protected, privileged conversation, but he has said from the minute they came to him with what he kind of thought was a harebrained idea was that why don't we just rob her?
Mhm.
And he's
That
always
made
said that.
sense.
And
Yeah.
that was more of his character at the time. You can call him like a jack boy or, a
Drug dealer.
thief or, drug dealer or whatever. But the real issue was he was with, oh, thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
But the real thing is that he was who he says he is. Screw it. Let's take her money. This is dumb.
Mhm.
And he
Yeah.
always said, Sigfrida was so in love with Katie, you weren't
Mhm.
going to talk him out of it. And that's a really interesting dynamic that those two have. I mean, I never in a million years thought Katie would have taken that all the way to trial. Never. If I would have bet $100 or $1,000 or even $1, I would have lost it all, because I thought the second she was taken into custody and separated from her children, she was going to save herself. And I never have been more wrong in my life. She rode that thing all the way to trial and lost
Mhm.
big. She could have walked away with full immunity, no prison, with her children, and she risked it all. And I thought that was dumb. And I'm so
Yeah.
sad that she didn't have somebody on her team that she could trust and she could have a relationship that could really help her understand how that would have been in her best interest.
Mhm. Yeah, I think her attorneys, especially Kawas, bought the whole story of poor misunderstood Katie, who is being wrongfully accused of this. And that's
Yeah.
why she refuses to turn and make a deal, because she didn't do it. So, I mean,
That's
seemed like the attorney became more like a sister figure, a friend to her, instead of advising her more objectively.
well, what ends up happening is whatever that relationship is in post conviction, you will soon see that Katie will say that Ms. Kawas and the man, I agree, Katie got horrid legal advice. You'll start to see Katie will say they were ineffective. They didn't advise me of these certain things. If they kept telling me I should testify, they kept telling me I shouldn't testify. I mean, whatever comes up in post conviction, but everyone kept asking me when Katie finally came clean and testified for the government and kind of admitted the role, was she going to get immunity? And I said, I did not think so. The ship had sailed. Georgia didn't need her. She was already convicted. And to be quite honest with you, to reopen that case and set aside a conviction, I don't even know if anybody in the Second Circuit even knows how to do that.
Oh,
I mean, that's a
wow.
big lift. I mean, that is like to set aside a conviction and reopen a case and and then offer somebody a plea. I mean, that would have such monumental ramifications that I don't even know if you could use Katie at that point as a witness, because then it really looks like she had gotten some special treatment after. Plus, she had given like 3 different versions of events. So the fact that she now wants to give her third version of what now is the truth, as opposed to the 2 other times she lied, just looks very disingenuous. And I think Georgia was smart. I always thought, I'm looking at Top Cat's comment, I always thought that Charlie was somehow financing her defense. And I had no inside information. This was just my personal, Monica Jordan's personal belief. And that's why I thought she was being loyal, so that like, they were paying for her lawyer. So, but I have since learned that her family actually begged, borrowed, sold cookies, sold assets, did everything they could to come up with money to pay for her legal team. At least that's my understanding. And that breaks my heart even more, because she's lost her children. She's lost her family, and she's lost everything. And she had the keys to the kingdom, even though she was the mastermind that kind of put all of these different silos, connected all these silos that we previously talked about.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Why didn't she qualify? I think Katie would have qualified for a public defender.
I think so too.
Somehow
I think so
through
too.
Charlie.
And that's why I always believed that Charlie was paying for them, because I absolutely think she would have been found indigent for cost and would have been afforded like a team like David, Chuck, and I, but somebody else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so some people are talking about how Christopher DeCoste apparently posted on someone's Instagram page that Katie wasn't given some sort of full immunity deal. So people are kind of going back and forth questioning, is that true or not?
I believe with True Crime Wifey, I believe Katie was offered a full walk if she testified. No prison, full immunity, and did not take it. Wendy only has use immunity under that subpoena.
Yeah. And plus, from what I recall, that's what Tara Kawas has said too in closing arguments, plus maybe her interview with mentor lawyer after Katie's sentencing. It gave me the impression that Katie was in fact offered some sort of full immunity deal if she would come clean. And
so was the argument by Tara DeCoste that this goes to show you how innocent my client was? She turned down a complete immunity.
Yeah. Why would she turn it down? It's clearly because she's innocent.
Telling the truth, and she's innocent.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I understand her strategy. It appears the jury did not agree with that strategy.
Yeah.
And now she's serving life in prison.
Exactly. So somebody mentioned the Hunkel case. I know you've been involved in so many interesting cases. Hunkel, or was that a case you were involved in?
How do you spell it?
Hunkel.
Uncle. No, I don't. That doesn't sound familiar.
No.
Where is it out of?
Or is it John Kunkel? No, never mind. I'm just Googling. Okay, maybe never mind. But there was this case that Chuck Collins sent me a picture of you with him.
Okay.
Elijah Brookins from
Elijah Brookins. Yeah.
Is it okay if I show the picture?
Oh, I don't care. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, he just sent it to me quite a while ago. So let's see. Where is the picture? Well,
if it's the picture I'm thinking of, this guy is a giant. He's like, he's so big. Elijah Brookins is a large man.
Yeah, I can see the picture here. So what happened in this case? It was a death penalty murder case?
Elijah Brookins, at 16 years old, was convicted of a murder in an apartment complex where they lived in Pensacola. And it was such a horrible place to live that the tenants called it Saigon because they referenced it to a Vietnam setting where it was just shootings and terrible. And Elijah was intellectually disabled and also had mental health issues. And he got sentenced as an adult and got sentenced to life in prison for this shooting case. And it was kind of a robbery gone bad. And I'm not 100% certain he should have gotten life in that case based on his age and his intellectual disabilities and the fact that he was potentially his IQ did not give him correct. The Elijah Brookins case was tried in Gadsden County. So what happened was he's serving life in prison. He's on a transport van coming from the West Florida Reception Center, not the one in Chipley, but the one in Lake Butler. They're transferring him back to a different prison, and he kills an inmate in the transport van. They're not quite sure where the murder took place, but the knife that was thrown out of the DOC bus window was found in Gadsden County. So that's where they tried that case. So that case is tried. He's convicted and sentenced to death. It comes back under the Hearst decision for a resentencing. And I did all of the mitigation in that case, and he got a life sentence.
Oh,
in that case. So that was his resentencing. So what people don't understand is that these guys he had been in prison for 20 years, if not longer. So I had to go and buy clothes for him to be at this resentencing, and trying to find clothes to fit this guy. I mean, he's a giant. He's just a huge man.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, everybody looks so happy, but it's still so sad because, he grew up in a under horrible circumstances, and he committed a crime when he was 16. So
what was so sad about his circumstances, they were so poor. Just a very sad set of circumstances. A lot of he was bullied unmercifully because of his size. He was slow intellectually, and I think had those facts been ferreted out at the time of his original trial from his original case, I think it may have resulted in a different outcome. But he was already serving life and then committed this murder while in DOC.
Okay. Well, do you have time for one last Markel question? I'm sorry, I keep saying
no, it's okay. No, it's okay.
We have family stuff too. So what are your feelings about Wendy Adelson? Because some people are asking that in the chat here. So that's what.
What do I think about her personally, or whether I think that she's going to get
anything?
Well, I vacillate back and forth between we all have crazy family members. I mean, maybe not that crazy, but we all have family members that you're like, why in the world would you do that? Not to the level that you would kill my spouse, but so I can talk myself in or out of it about whether she's involved. But I will tell you, I did learn just through reading some publications and stuff, and just the talk of the town, that she had always claimed that she did not have the finances. What was it? That she didn't buy that house because she couldn't afford. She pulled out of that real estate deal because she couldn't afford the house.
Oh, yeah, which sounds ridiculous.
When I learned about that, I found that to be very fascinating, because we now know that she did have the means to buy the house, but Charlie told her it was a bad idea to buy the house. And I'm always like, If my brothers told me, don't buy the house, it's a bad idea, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I can't fight Danny and move the kids. My life is here in Tallahassee now. And so I always felt like that was a little bit of a finger on the scale for me to think that she knew something was going on. Now, having said that, do I think they'll indict her and ever and charge her? No, because I don't think they will, because she's testified so many times under immunity, under a subpoena. Like, how in the world would you ever ferret out what you learned from her testimony and what you knew independently, unless there's something new that comes out? I will say this, and I have always said this about their whether they will prosecute her or not. There's no statute of limitations on murder. There is no race to go and figure it out. So if they take 10 years, I mean, look how long it took them to get Denise Williams. Mm-hmm. So I think Georgia is so methodical and so strong in how she handles these cases that if it takes several more years to get all of the nails to put in the coffin, why would you not wait to make sure you secure a conviction instead of, just because you can maybe indict her now and go forward doesn't necessarily mean that she would get a conviction. And so why would you take a swing at the king if you're not going to take his head off? Mm-hmm. That's just my personal opinion. You know, like I said, Georgia can wait this one out for another 10 years.
Well, we hope she doesn't.
Who knows who's going to pop up and say, Wendy confessed to me, or Wendy knew, or maybe Charlie will, come forward.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Donna will. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Joe Patuto, who is a law professor who's been on here many times. Yeah. So she said that most likely there would have to be some sort of hearing, like a pretrial hearing, to determine, whether certain info was gleaned from the trials where Wendy had the limited use and derivative use immunity versus from independent sources. And I mean, this isn't my specialty, obviously, but I think that when she did testify at all these trials, she was so evasive and she hardly gave any good info anyway that Kappelman didn't already know. So, that's why I feel like it doesn't make it harder to prosecute Wendy because of that immunity issue. Because she didn't really give
anything
information anyway. Right. So all that stuff she said before at the police interview, plus whatever evidence they might have collected on her independently, I think there's still enough. I'm still optimistic, but it does make me more and more frustrated thinking like, okay, it's now late October. How about by Thanksgiving? How about by, kids' winter break? Are they going to arrest her? Because Dave Ehrenberg was very optimistic about her chances of getting arrested.
Right. No, I think they have enough, but I'm not as like intricately involved. And obviously the government doesn't share their playbook with me. And this person is absolutely right. I don't think they've learned anything new. I mean, the fact that she testifies that Donna called Dan an asshole, it's like, I think we've been hearing that from day one. I mean,
yeah,
I thought it was a little disingenuous that, Jackie and them, or Miss Fulford and them, had, she baked him banana bread. Well, knowing Donna, she probably put a little antifreeze in it. I don't know. I mean,
sure
I don't know if I would eat anything that Donna, I mean, they really played the, dressing her in cardigans and making her look like this little old lady and
grandma. Yeah,
like a grandma. But I've always said, these poor children. I mean, what a terrible existence. And then I think the really new the really new meat on the bone on this last trial was I did see a part of the Robert Adelson, and I just was heartbroken for that guy. I mean, some of the most telling information, because I would see snippets here and there. I couldn't just dedicate, watching, the trial, but I would see and publications, things about Robert. And when he said, I asked Mom, oh my gosh, they found who killed, or they arrested somebody that killed Danny, and he never had another conversation with his mother after that. I'm like,
that's so incriminating.
I mean,
and
that was just
she just said, "Oh, I gotta go. I gotta go."
Yeah,
I hangs up on the phone. Yeah,
but never called him back. Like never had another conversation.
Yeah,
and he felt like, something's really weird. I don't really think I want to call Mom back. I found that to be, you can tell so much sometimes without saying so many words, and that was very heartfelt. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I thought it was a watershed moment. That's a really great way to put that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we do have to get going due to all our family
Yeah, no
obligations and
worries.
stuff. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah, someone says Monica Jordan is the queen. Yay.
Oh,
Such a
thank
strong
you.
woman. So helpful to hear her person. And we didn't even get to talk about is it Eileen or
Eileen Wuornos.
Wuornos?
Yeah. I worked on Eileen Wuornos's case in post-conviction, and right up before her execution when she waived her appeals. And they brought in 3 doctors to evaluate her, 2 of which claimed that she was not incompetent, which is just, if you spend any amount of time with Eileen Wuornos, you knew that she was very, very, very troubled and very, very mentally ill. And that there's a lot we could talk about there, but all of those movies and all of those cops that were so excited to be a part of the first female serial killer, they probably could have prevented some of those tragedies with those other men.
I see. Okay. Well, okay. One real last question. Do you take on people to train with you as investigators?
I do trainings for like the public defender's office and different things. But no one's ever like come to me as a licensed investigator or as a intern and said, hey, can you train me? But I always say people should go work for the public defender's office. It's the most crash course, fire, just get thrown right into the fire and learn how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You get lots of hands-on experience because
right? And you're super unappreciative because people, clients cannot be so kind sometimes.
Yeah. They're like, you're working for
where's the real lawyer?
Free. Yeah, exactly. They call them public pretenders or something. Yeah, because I interned for a couple of public defenders' offices when I was in law school up near DC. So I did see, those attorneys, everyone just had to go to court all the time, do everything yourself.
They're the best. I know people don't see it that way, but they are in the trenches every day, and they do it because they truly believe in the cause, and they truly are fighting and defending the Constitution, and they're certainly not doing it for the power or the privilege or the accolades, or certainly not for the money. And I often tell people that are in really, really big trouble, man, stay with the public defender. Now, are they spread thin, and are you not getting the hands-on attention that you probably want? Probably not, but those people are in it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Much great work, and thanks for doing great work for Luis Rivera and his legal team also. So
yeah. All right. I appreciate you guys. Your fans are great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Sorry we got to get going, but
no worries.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Too.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.